The sound came first, sharp, flat, final. It cut through the crowd before anyone understood what it meant. A hand had moved. Too fast, too deliberate, then silence. Not the soft kind, the kind that presses down on a room and steals breath. Conversations died mid-word. Smiles dropped. Glasses paused halfway to lips. Every face turned toward the same spot. She stood still. Her body did not sway. Her hands did not rise. Her eyes stayed forward, focused on nothing and everything at once. The woman who struck her did not step back. She stood tall, chin lifted, as if the action required no apology. As if the space itself belonged to her. A few feet away, a man froze. Shock crossed his face first, then disbelief, then something closer to fear. People waited for a reaction. A raised voice. A rush forward. A scene. None came. The woman who had been struck did not cry. She did not argue. She did not explain. She breathed once, slow, controlled. In that breath, something shifted. This was no longer a moment that could be smoothed over, no longer a misunderstanding, no longer something that could be handled later in private. This was public, clear, and permanent. Before anyone could speak, she turned. Not in anger, not in panic, in certainty. She took one step away from the man who should have protected her, and kept walking. Have you ever stayed quiet to keep peace? Not because you agreed, not because you felt safe, but because speaking felt heavier than swallowing the moment. Have you ever smiled through discomfort so others would stay calm? Have you ever told yourself, one more time, one more dinner, one more gathering? Have you ever been corrected in front of others by someone meant to welcome you? Not with shouting, with tone, with posture, with words chosen to place you beneath them. Have you ever felt small without anyone raising their voice? Some wounds arrive without noise. They arrive dressed as manners. They arrive framed as concern. They arrive with witnesses who stay still. And when the person beside you stays silent, the harm cuts deeper, because silence sends a message. It says, this moment will pass. It says, endurance matters more than dignity. It says your comfort ranks lower than keeping things smooth. Many people know this place. They know what it means to adjust themselves so a room stays comfortable. They know how to disappear politely. They know how to convince themselves love requires patience without limits. The question isn't why she stayed quiet for so long. The real question is this: what happens when silence finally reaches its edge? She did not leave because of one strike. That moment only revealed what had been building quietly for years. She had learned how to soften her presence, how to step back so others felt important, how to carry discomfort without letting it show. She told herself patience proved love. She told herself endurance earned respect. She told herself peace required sacrifice. But standing there, surrounded by eyes that watched and did nothing, she understood something with sudden clarity. Silence had not protected her. Grace had not shielded her. Loyalty had not saved her place. The man she loved stood close enough to reach her. Close enough to stop it sooner. Close enough to choose her first. He did not. That truth landed without drama. And in that quiet realization, she made a decision that would change every life connected to hers. She would not argue. She would not demand apologies. She would not wait for promises. She would leave with nothing but herself. No public statement followed. No interviews, no explanations offered to satisfy curiosity. She walked away, unseen by the world that had just watched her fall out of favor. What no one knew then was this: she did not walk away alone for long. She left before dawn. No audience, no farewell scene, just a door closing with intention. What she carried did not weigh much. A few clothes, a few documents, enough to begin again somewhere no one knew her as an accessory or an obligation. What she carried inside mattered more. Resolve. Weeks passed, then months. The world moved forward without her noticing. Headlines celebrated growth. Names climbed lists. Applause followed progress. She did not watch. Her life grew smaller on purpose. Quieter, safer. And then came the truth she never planned to share. 2 heartbeats where there had been one. A future that required courage instead of comfort. She made choices with clarity. She chose privacy over explanation. She chose stability over sympathy. She chose to build something steady far from the place where she learned how easily dignity could be taken. Years passed in steady motion. 5 of them. She became stronger without needing to prove it. She became whole without asking permission. She became a mother before she became visible again. When fate finally placed her back in his path, she did not prepare a speech. She did not rehearse anger. She arrived as she was, grounded, composed, and no longer alone. 5 years after she disappeared, he saw her again. Not in memory, not in regret. In a crowded space built for influence and ambition, she stood across the room, calm and unguarded. The same presence, sharpened by time, strength without display, and beside her stood 2 children, a boy and a girl. Same height, same curls, eyes he recognized before his mind allowed the thought. The room faded around him. This was not coincidence. This was not rumor. This was consequence made visible. She noticed him at the same moment. No shock crossed her face. No fear. Only acknowledgement. Later, in a quiet corridor, truth arrived without accusation. She had walked away with nothing but dignity. She returned with proof of what silence had cost. Before this story unfolds, pause for a moment. If you believe love should protect, not humiliate. If you believe boundaries save futures. If you believe real love requires presence, not excuses. Subscribe to Love Tales with Mr. Easton. This story is about what happens when a woman chooses herself, and what it takes for love to earn its way back. Ava Bennett did not grow up learning how to demand space. She learned how to share it. Her childhood home valued calm above volume. Feelings were acknowledged, but never allowed to spill. Disagreements ended quickly, not because they were resolved, but because they were set aside. Voices stayed low. Faces stayed composed. Everyone learned how to move on without making too much noise. Ava watched closely. She noticed how tension softened when someone stayed agreeable. She noticed how praise followed cooperation. She noticed how discomfort faded faster when no one insisted on being heard. By the time she was young, she understood an unspoken rule. Harmony mattered more than expression. At school, teachers described her as easy. Friends described her as understanding. Adults praised her maturity. She learned how to read rooms before entering them. She learned how to sense moods without words. She learned how to adjust herself so others stayed comfortable. This did not come from fear. It came from care. Ava believed kindness showed through restraint. She believed love meant easing burdens, not adding weight. She believed strength appeared quiet, steady, and patient. When conflict arose, she did not rush to defend herself. She paused. She listened. She softened her tone. She searched for compromise, even when none was requested. And most of the time, this worked. People trusted her. People leaned on her. People felt safe around her. What no one noticed was what Ava learned to place aside. Her preferences, her discomfort, her limits. She did not feel erased. Not yet. She felt useful, needed, valued for her calm. By the time she reached adulthood, Ava carried her emotional training like second nature. She did not question it. She did not examine it. It felt like wisdom. She believed peace came from choosing silence at the right moments. She believed love thrived when friction stayed low. She believed endurance proved character. Those beliefs shaped how she loved. They shaped what she accepted. They shaped how far she would bend before noticing she was no longer standing straight. This was the foundation she carried into every relationship, including the one that would test it most. Ava did not fear disagreement. She feared what followed it. She had seen how arguments shifted rooms, how warmth drained away, how people grew distant after words were exchanged carelessly. Even when apologies came later, something often stayed altered. She did not want that. To Ava, peace felt like safety. It meant stability. It meant relationships that lasted. Conflict, in her experience, carried risk. It invited misunderstandings. It created space for pride to grow. It turned small moments into dividing lines. So she learned another way. When tension appeared, she lowered her voice instead of raising it. When opinions clashed, she searched for common ground. When someone crossed her comfort, she reframed it as unintentional. This approach earned her trust. Friends confided in her. Colleagues respected her steadiness. Partners appreciated her calm. Ava believed she was preserving connection. She told herself that choosing peace did not mean losing herself. It meant prioritizing what mattered. She believed some battles were not worth the damage they caused. In romantic relationships, this belief deepened. She wanted love that felt safe, not loud. She wanted a partner who valued consistency over intensity. She wanted a bond built on patience rather than passion alone. So when moments arose that felt uncomfortable, she softened them. A comment that felt dismissive became a misunderstanding. A boundary crossed became a conversation for later. A pattern forming became something she promised herself would improve with time. She trusted time. She trusted effort. She trusted that love, when treated gently, would grow stronger. What Ava did not recognize was the cost of always being the one who adjusted. Each time she chose peace, she moved a small step away from herself. Not enough to feel loss, just enough to avoid friction. Over time, this pattern became habit. She stopped checking whether she agreed before she agreed. She stopped noticing when she felt overlooked. She stopped distinguishing between compromise and surrender. Peace became the goal, not mutual understanding. And because nothing visibly broke, Ava believed she was doing it right. She did not see the imbalance forming. She did not see how silence could train others to speak over her. She did not see how her calm could invite control rather than respect. To Ava, peace felt like love's foundation. She did not yet know that peace without boundaries becomes permission. Ava believed patience was proof. Not proof of weakness. Proof of commitment. She had watched relationships fail around her, not because people lacked feeling, but because they reacted too quickly. Words spoken in anger. Decisions made in heat. Pride placed above repair. She promised herself she would be different. She believed love needed time to breathe. She believed people grew when given space. She believed mistakes softened when met with understanding. So when love tested her, she slowed down instead of pushing back. If someone dismissed her opinion, she waited for a better moment. If she felt overlooked, she reminded herself that everyone carried stress. If disappointment surfaced, she chose grace before reaction. Patience felt mature. It felt like choosing the relationship over the moment. With Easton, this belief settled deeply. He was thoughtful, measured, focused. His world demanded precision and long hours. Ava admired that discipline. She respected his ambition. She believed her patience supported his growth. When his attention shifted toward work, she adjusted. When his family dynamics felt heavy, she stayed flexible. When his mother's tone unsettled her, she told herself love required tolerance. She trusted that patience would be seen. She trusted that patience would be rewarded. She trusted that love, given enough time, corrected imbalance. This belief made her resilient. It also made her quiet. She learned how to hold discomfort without letting it surface. She learned how to reassure others, even when she needed reassurance herself. She learned how to wait for change instead of asking for it. At first, patience felt empowering. It gave her a sense of control. She was choosing calm. She was choosing maturity. But slowly, patience stopped being a choice and became an expectation. She waited for apologies that never arrived. She waited for acknowledgement that stayed unspoken. She waited for protection that did not come when it mattered. Still, she waited, because walking away felt like failure, because speaking up felt like disruption, because patience had always worked before. Ava did not realize she was teaching others how long she would endure. She did not realize patience without boundaries teaches people where not to stop. By the time she questioned it, love had already learned to lean on her silence. And silence had begun to feel heavier than patience ever should. The changes did not arrive all at once. They arrived quietly, dressed as consideration. Ava began to edit herself before speaking. She paused longer, weighing how her words might land instead of whether they were true. She chose phrasing that softened her thoughts, trimmed her needs, and left no sharp edges behind. At gatherings, she laughed at moments that did not feel amusing. She nodded through conversations that brushed past her. When decisions were made without her input, she accepted them as practical. She told herself this was maturity, but slowly, her preferences began to disappear from shared spaces. Restaurants were chosen without asking her taste. Plans were made around others' schedules. Conversations shifted before she finished her thoughts. When she noticed, she corrected herself inwardly. It's not important. It's easier this way. I don't want to make things tense. She stopped volunteering opinions, unless invited. She stopped challenging statements that unsettled her. She stopped noticing how often she was the one adjusting. What changed most was her sense of presence. She attended events, but she no longer felt fully there. She stood beside her partner, yet felt slightly removed, like someone careful not to take up too much room. Compliments she once received about her confidence softened into remarks about how easy she was, how agreeable, how understanding. People praised her for not being difficult. Ava absorbed those words as approval. She did not see the warning in them. Because ease, when unbalanced, turns into expectation. And expectation, when unchallenged, turns into entitlement. The most telling sign appeared in private moments. When something hurt her, her first instinct was no longer to speak. It was to explain it away to herself. She protected others from her feelings by silencing them. She still believed she was choosing peace. She did not yet recognize that she was slowly removing herself from her own life, that each unspoken boundary made her easier to overlook. Self-erasure rarely announces itself. It arrives as cooperation. It grows through patience. It hides behind love. By the time Ava sensed something was wrong, she could no longer remember when she had last chosen herself without hesitation. Silence gave Ava control, or so she believed. It allowed her to move through life without confrontation. It kept relationships smooth. It prevented moments from escalating into fractures. For a long time, silence worked. It kept conversations calm. It preserved harmony. It avoided discomfort. But silence carries a cost that arrives slowly. Each unspoken boundary teaches others what they can take. Each overlooked slight lowers the standard of care. Each moment endured without response rewrites what respect looks like in a relationship. Ava did not become invisible overnight. She became optional. Her needs shifted from assumed to negotiable. Her comfort became secondary to convenience. Her presence became something others adjusted around instead of toward. Still, she stayed, because silence felt familiar, because speaking felt risky, because she believed love required endurance. The danger of silence is not cruelty, it is permission. It tells people there will be no consequence. It tells them they can continue. It tells them they do not need to change. By the time silence stops feeling safe, it often feels too late to reverse. Ava stood at that edge without knowing it. She had protected peace so carefully that she forgot to protect herself. She had chosen patience so consistently that she stopped being chosen in return. The moment that would shatter her silence had nothing to do with anger. It had everything to do with dignity, and when that moment came, she did not raise her voice. She did not argue. She did not seek validation. She left. Because silence may feel like safety at first, but without boundaries, it becomes a place where respect cannot survive. This lesson would shape every decision Ava made next. It would guide how she loved. It would define how she rebuilt. And it would challenge everyone who believed silence kept love intact. Ava met Ethan in a space where no one tried to impress anyone. There were no grand entrances, no speeches, no reason to perform. They met through mutual work connections at a small gathering meant for discussion, not display. People spoke in turns. Phones stayed down. The room held quiet focus. Ethan noticed Ava because she listened, not the polite kind of listening people use while waiting to speak, the kind where attention stays present, the kind where pauses feel intentional. Ava noticed Ethan because he did not dominate the room. He asked questions instead of delivering opinions. He spoke clearly, then stopped. He allowed silence to exist without filling it. Their first conversation stayed simple. Books, work values, how pressure changes people. No flirting, no urgency, just ease. They spoke again weeks later. Then again after that. Their connection did not rush forward. It settled in slowly, like something finding its place without effort. Ethan admired Ava's steadiness. He felt understood without being examined. Around her, he did not need to explain ambition or downplay it. She did not compete with his drive. She did not shrink beside it either. Ava felt calm with Ethan. He did not push for access. He did not test boundaries. He did not demand more than she offered. That mattered. Their early time together reflected who they were individually. Walks that stayed unhurried. Conversations that ended naturally instead of being cut short. Shared meals without distractions. Ava felt no need to perform peace. It existed already. Ethan felt no pressure to prove himself. His work spoke loudly enough elsewhere. They learned each other through consistency, not intensity. When they chose each other, it felt deliberate, not dramatic, not reactive. They built their relationship on presence, on reliability, on trust earned through repetition. That foundation mattered later, because what they shared at the beginning was real. It was not convenience. It was not image. It was not ambition disguised as affection. It was two people choosing quiet certainty in a world that often rewards noise. This was why the marriage mattered, not because it looked perfect, because it felt safe. Ethan's love did not arrive with pressure. It arrived with consistency. From the beginning, he showed Ava who he was without rehearsal. He did not rush intimacy. He did not test her limits to see how far he could go. He paid attention in ways that felt grounded, not consuming. He remembered details others overlooked. He followed through on small promises. He stayed present even when nothing exciting happened. That mattered to Ava. She had seen passion before. She had seen attention that burned fast and faded just as quickly. Ethan offered something steadier, something that did not ask her to be more, louder, or different. With him, she did not feel managed. She did not feel corrected. She did not feel measured against expectation. He asked her opinion and waited for it. He respected her pauses. He allowed her to move at her own pace without interpreting caution as distance. Ethan's affection felt intentional. When he cared, he showed it quietly. A message sent at the right moment. A check-in without urgency. A habit of making space for her in his life, rather than fitting her into the margins. Ava noticed how he handled disagreement. He did not withdraw. He did not raise his voice. He did not seek control. When they disagreed, he listened. When he made a mistake, he acknowledged it without deflection. That steadiness built trust faster than intensity ever could. Around Ethan, Ava did not feel the need to stay silent to keep peace. Peace existed without effort. That was new. His love did not demand endurance. It did not require her to prove patience. It did not ask her to disappear to make room. He chose her openly, not with grand gestures, but with clarity. He introduced her with pride. He included her in decisions. He treated her presence as essential, not optional. Ava felt seen without being placed on display. For someone who learned to value calm, this kind of love felt rare. It aligned with everything she believed love should be. Safe, steady, respectful. She trusted it because it did not feel like a test. That trust shaped her commitment. It made her willing to build a future with him. It made her believe she had found a partner who would protect the quiet space they shared. What Ava did not yet see was how external forces would challenge that balance. Because while Ethan's love felt different, the world around him did not slow down. And not everyone valued calm the way they did. What Ava and Ethan built together did not rely on excitement. It relied on rhythm. They created routines that anchored them. Even as schedules shifted and demands increased, they protected small spaces that belonged only to them. Mornings began without urgency. Coffee shared at the counter. A few words exchanged before the day claimed them. Phones stayed face down. Silence felt companionable, not awkward. Evenings mattered more. Some nights included dinner at home. Nothing elaborate. Food prepared together. Music low. Conversation moving easily between serious and light. Other nights meant walks after long days, steps matching without needing direction. They spoke honestly in those moments. Ava shared her thoughts without filtering every sentence. Ethan listened without interrupting. When she paused, he waited. When he spoke, he did not rush to fill the space. That patience created safety. Disagreements existed, but they stayed contained. They discussed choices without turning them into tests of loyalty. When tension surfaced, they addressed it before it hardened into distance. Ava felt secure expressing doubt. Ethan felt supported sharing pressure. Their home became a place where neither needed to perform. This emotional safety mattered deeply to Ava. It allowed her to relax habits she had carried for years. Around Ethan, she did not need to calculate her presence. She could exist without constant adjustment. That sense of safety strengthened her attachment. She believed they were building something durable, something that would withstand external noise. Their bond did not depend on approval or appearance. It rested on mutual respect. When Ethan's work demanded more time, they adapted without resentment. When Ava needed quiet, Ethan honored it without question. Their routines protected their connection, or so Ava believed. Because while calm defined their private world, pressure gathered outside it. Demands grew. Expectations multiplied. And slowly, forces beyond their control began pressing against the quiet they valued. The routines stayed intact on the surface, but the space they protected would soon face its first real test. As Ethan's career accelerated, Ava did not step back. She stepped in with intention. She understood what growth demanded: long hours, strategic choices, visibility, pressure that did not switch off at the end of the day. She did not compete with those demands. She learned how to support them without losing herself, or so she believed. Ava educated herself quietly. She learned the language of meetings. She learned how to read financial conversations without interrupting them. She learned when to offer insight and when to let Ethan lead. Not because he asked her to, because she wanted to stand beside him with confidence. At events, she carried herself with grace. She listened more than she spoke, but when she did speak, her words held weight. She did not chase attention. She earned respect through composure. People noticed. They saw her as steady, as thoughtful, as someone who belonged in those rooms. Ethan valued her presence. He trusted her judgment. He often asked for her perspective in private, valuing her ability to see beyond numbers and outcomes. She reminded him of people when his world demanded performance. At home, she remained his anchor. She absorbed the stress he did not release elsewhere. She created a space where he could exhale without explanation. She handled details he no longer had time to manage. She protected their routines when his schedule threatened them. Ava believed this balance defined partnership. She was not diminishing herself. She was contributing differently. As success followed Ethan, Ava remained grounded. She did not measure her worth by visibility. She measured it by impact. Still, subtle shifts began to appear. Decisions came faster. Schedules filled more quickly. Family expectations grew louder. Ava adjusted, as she always had. She made space. She stayed flexible. She trusted that her steadiness mattered. What she did not realize was how easily support can turn into silence when no one checks its cost. Her role beside Ethan's rise was meaningful. It mattered deeply to the life they built. But it also placed her closer to forces that did not value calm, forces that mistook patience for permission. The higher Ethan rose, the more visible Ava became to those who believed she did not belong there at all. What Ava and Ethan shared stood on mutual regard. That was the center of their bond. They chose each other without performance. They protected calm because they both valued it. Their relationship grew through listening, not dominance, through presence, not control. Inside their private world, Ava felt secure. Inside that space, her voice mattered. Inside that space, respect stayed intact. The threat did not come from within. It came from outside forces that valued order over empathy, image over connection, hierarchy over partnership. As Ethan's influence expanded, new expectations entered their lives. Traditions, opinions, rules disguised as guidance. These pressures did not announce themselves loudly at first. They arrived as advice, as concern, as reminders of how things should look. Ava sensed the difference immediately. Where her relationship with Ethan felt mutual, these new interactions felt directional. Where her marriage valued calm, these forces valued control. Where Ava was seen as a partner at home, she was evaluated as an accessory elsewhere. She responded the only way she knew, with patience, with grace, with silence. The contrast grew sharper. At home, she was heard. In public, she was corrected. At home, her presence felt natural. In certain spaces, it felt questioned. Ethan did not intend this divide. His focus remained fixed on progress, expansion, responsibility. He believed the calm they shared would extend outward. He believed respect inside the marriage guaranteed respect outside it. He was wrong, because respect must be defended where it is challenged. Ava tried to bridge the gap quietly. She softened moments that felt sharp. She excused comments that crossed lines. She believed maintaining harmony would preserve their bond, but harmony requires shared effort. When one person protects calm alone, calm becomes fragile. The strength of Ava and Ethan's relationship made the threat more dangerous, not less. It gave Ava reason to endure. It gave her hope that patience would correct what discomfort revealed. She trusted love to hold. She trusted silence to pass. She did not yet understand that silence, once allowed into shared spaces, begins to change the balance of power. The bond that mattered most would soon face a moment where patience would no longer protect it. And in that moment, Ava would have to choose between preserving peace and preserving herself. Evelyn Walker did not enter rooms quietly. She entered with expectation, not the loud kind, the kind that assumes recognition before it is offered. Her posture stayed upright. Her tone remained measured. She spoke as someone accustomed to being listened to without interruption. Evelyn valued order. She believed people belonged in clear places. She believed structure kept chaos away. She believed roles existed for a reason and should be respected without question. To her, appearance reflected discipline. Presentation signaled worth. Manners were not optional. They were proof of upbringing and refinement. Evelyn did not see herself as unkind. She believed she was correct. She moved through life confident in her standards. She corrected without hesitation. She offered opinions framed as guidance. She rarely asked questions because she believed she already understood how things should be done. In her world, authority did not need to announce itself. It lived in expectation, in tradition, in legacy. She respected success, but only when it followed her definition of propriety. She valued family reputation deeply. Image mattered as much as outcome, sometimes more. Evelyn believed respect flowed downward, from elders to younger generations, from established names to newcomers, from those who built foundations to those who entered later. She expected gratitude for instruction, compliance for correction, acceptance for tradition. When Ava entered her life, Evelyn assessed her quickly. Not with cruelty, with calculation. She noticed Ava's calm. She noticed her softness. She noticed how easily Ava adjusted herself in conversation. To Evelyn, this did not signal strength. It signaled flexibility, and flexibility in Evelyn's mind invited guidance. She did not raise her voice. She did not confront directly. She simply positioned herself as the authority in shared spaces. She spoke first. She decided seating. She corrected details others overlooked. Evelyn believed she was maintaining standards. She believed she was protecting her son's world from disruption. What she did not consider was how power, when exercised without empathy, reshapes every room it enters, and how quiet people often feel its weight first. Evelyn believed the world worked best when everyone knew their place, not out of cruelty, out of order. She came from a background where structure defined success. Families carried names like responsibilities. Behavior reflected lineage. Public conduct mattered because it spoke long after conversations ended. To Evelyn, hierarchy was not oppression. It was protection. It protected reputation. It protected legacy. It protected the future she imagined for her family. She believed elders guided and others followed. She believed experience granted authority without debate. She believed family identity required careful management, especially once public attention arrived. Image was not vanity to her. It was currency. The way one stood, the way one spoke, the way one appeared beside success. All of it mattered. Evelyn did not value disruption. She valued consistency. She preferred predictability over warmth. In her view, affection could soften standards if left unchecked. When her son's influence expanded, Evelyn felt responsibility sharpen. More eyes meant more judgment. More attention meant less room for error. She watched everything closely. How Ava dressed at events. How she interacted with donors. How she carried herself beside Ethan. Evelyn framed her observations as concern. She believed she was helping Ava rise to expectation. She believed instruction prevented embarrassment. She believed correction saved face. What she did not acknowledge was how her standards left little space for individuality. Ava's calm did not fit Evelyn's model of presence. Her quiet did not read as confidence. It read as uncertainty that needed direction. Evelyn expected Ava to adapt upward, to learn traditions quickly, to accept guidance without resistance, to understand her role beside power. She believed hierarchy demanded this adjustment. What Evelyn never questioned was whether respect should move both ways. In her mind, authority flowed one direction. Approval followed compliance. Acceptance arrived after alignment. Love did not change this belief. Family, to Evelyn, required structure first and understanding second. This worldview shaped every interaction she had with Ava, not with hostility, with certainty. And certainty, when unchecked, can press harder than anger ever could. Evelyn rarely corrected Ava in private. She preferred rooms with witnesses, not because she wanted attention, but because authority feels stronger when it appears natural. When others watch and accept it without question. Her comments arrived wrapped in civility, a suggestion about posture during dinner, a remark about how certain colors carried more presence, a reminder about which seat suited a hostess best. Each comment sounded harmless on its own, even helpful to those listening from a distance. Evelyn never raised her voice. She never used harsh language. She smiled as she spoke, her tone steady and composed. That was what made the control difficult to name. She adjusted Ava's sleeve, as if tidying something out of place. She interrupted her gently, finishing sentences with better phrasing. She redirected conversations away from Ava's interests, without acknowledging the shift. At gatherings, Evelyn decided where Ava sat, who she stood near, when she should step back to allow others forward. It happened seamlessly. Guests followed Evelyn's lead without realizing they were doing so. Ava noticed. She felt the adjustment each time, small but consistent. When Ava spoke, Evelyn sometimes responded by addressing someone else. When Ava shared an opinion, Evelyn reframed it with refinement, altering the message without credit. Nothing was openly hostile. That was the point. Social control works best when it blends into etiquette. Ava sensed the pattern, but struggled to challenge it. The moments passed quickly. The room moved on. Calling attention to them felt uncomfortable, even dramatic. Evelyn counted on this. She understood that quiet people hesitate to disrupt flow. She knew Ava valued harmony. She knew silence would follow each correction. So she continued. She introduced Ava as a companion rather than a partner. She praised others while glancing toward Ava with measured appraisal. She spoke of standards often, never naming who failed to meet them. Each moment reinforced a message. You are welcome here, but on my terms. And because Evelyn never broke social rules outright, no one intervened. The behavior stayed invisible to those who did not look closely. Ava felt the control more than she could explain it. She left gatherings feeling smaller, though nothing overt had happened. This was how power asserted itself without confrontation, quietly, consistently, in full view. Ava noticed the discomfort before she named it. She felt it in the way her shoulders tightened during gatherings, in how her breath shortened when certain comments landed too close, in how she replayed conversations afterward, searching for meaning she could not quite explain. Still, she did not confront it. Instead, she reasoned with herself. She told herself Evelyn came from a different time. She told herself expectations shifted with status. She told herself none of it was meant personally. Ava believed understanding softened harm, so she adjusted inwardly. If Evelyn corrected her posture, Ava told herself she was learning. If her words were redirected, Ava told herself the moment was not important. If her presence felt reduced, Ava told herself she was being sensitive. She chose interpretation over reaction. This was familiar territory. Ava had spent her life smoothing edges, finding explanations that preserved peace. It felt natural to protect others from discomfort, even when that discomfort belonged to her. She reminded herself why she stayed quiet. Ethan was under pressure. Family dynamics were complex. Making waves would create distance. Ava believed silence showed loyalty. She also believed that time would correct imbalance. That familiarity would soften Evelyn's stance. That patience would earn acceptance. So she waited. She studied Evelyn's tone and adjusted her responses. She learned which topics to avoid. She learned when to smile and when to step back. Each choice felt small, but together they formed a pattern. Ava stopped sharing openly in those spaces. She limited her presence without fully withdrawing. She became careful, measured, controlled. She convinced herself this was temporary, that once things settled, respect would follow. What Ava did not see was how rationalization slowly replaced truth, how explaining away discomfort delayed necessary clarity, how silence allowed behavior to solidify into routine. By the time Ava acknowledged the pattern internally, it already felt established. She was no longer reacting to isolated moments. She was adapting to a role, and roles, once accepted, are difficult to renegotiate. Ava did not lack awareness. She lacked permission to trust it. Ethan did not ignore what was happening. He simply did not see all of it. From his position, the world moved quickly. Meetings blurred into travel. Decisions stacked. Responsibility demanded focus. When he entered family spaces, he believed he was stepping into familiarity, not tension. He trusted calm at face value. Ava did not complain. Conversations stayed polite. No arguments surfaced openly. To Ethan, this signaled stability. When small moments reached him, they arrived softened. Ava chose her words carefully. She framed discomfort as misunderstanding. She dismissed incidents before they could take shape. She means well. It's nothing serious. I can manage it. Ethan heard these reassurances and accepted them. He believed his wife's calm reflected resilience. He admired her ability to navigate complexity without conflict. He assumed maturity lived in restraint. What he missed were the moments he was not present for, the pauses before Ava spoke, the way conversations shifted when he left the room, the subtle corrections delivered when his attention moved elsewhere. Ethan trusted his mother's intentions. He trusted his wife's patience. Between those two trusts, the truth slipped through. He noticed distance forming, but misread its cause. Ava grew quieter at gatherings. She excused herself earlier. She stopped offering opinions around family. Ethan attributed this to preference. He did not ask deeper questions, not because he did not care, but because nothing appeared urgent. The absence of confrontation felt reassuring. He believed love protected itself naturally. Ethan did intervene when moments became visible. He corrected his mother's tone when he heard it. He offered private reminders about respect, but these interventions were reactive, not sustained. They addressed incidents, not patterns. What Ethan did not understand yet was this: power rarely reveals itself fully in front of those it respects. It waits for private spaces. It relies on subtlety. It depends on silence. By trusting calm without examining its cost, Ethan allowed imbalance to grow, not through cruelty, through assumption. And assumptions, left unchecked, create space where harm can settle quietly. By the time Ava sensed the shift clearly, it no longer felt like a series of moments. It felt like a pattern. What once felt like discomfort now felt like erosion. Small, steady, almost polite. Nothing loud enough to demand immediate action. Nothing obvious enough to force a decision. Yet something essential had begun to weaken. Love, when unprotected, does not collapse suddenly. It thins. Ava still loved Ethan. That never changed. What changed was how safe that love felt outside their private space. The calm they shared at home no longer extended into the rooms where power gathered. She felt the divide grow. At home, she was a partner. In certain spaces, she was managed. At home, her presence mattered. Elsewhere, her presence was adjusted. This contrast created tension Ava could no longer rationalize away. She began to feel alone in moments that should have felt shared. She stood beside Ethan, yet felt separated by an invisible line drawn by expectation and authority. And the hardest truth settled quietly. Love does not protect itself. It must be defended. Ava waited for Ethan to notice the pattern fully, to step in before correction became habit, To draw a clear boundary that signaled respect was not negotiable. He did not because he agreed with the behavior, but because the cost had not reached him yet. Ava understood something then. Silence had worked too well. It had preserved peace at the expense of clarity. It had allowed discomfort to become routine. It had trained everyone involved to accept a version of her that asked for less. This realization did not come with anger. It came with sadness. Because Ava saw the fracture forming long before it broke. She saw how love could exist without protection and still fail. How patience could preserve connection while weakening its foundation. The moral tension sharpened. How long should love endure before it demands defense? How much silence is too much? When does peace stop being noble and start becoming harmful? Ava stood at the edge of those questions without answers yet. But the ground beneath her relationship had already shifted. And once love begins to fracture, even quietly, it leaves marks that cannot be ignored. Moments never arrived loudly. They arrived dressed as manners. At first, they appeared during gatherings meant to feel welcoming. Dinners where laughter flowed easily. Events where introductions mattered. Conversations where roles were quietly reinforced without explanation. Ava noticed how often her presence was reduced with a smile. She was introduced without mention of her role beside Easton. Her name followed by pauses that suggested uncertainty. Her accomplishments left unspoken while others received careful acknowledgement. When she spoke, responses sometimes drifted past her, landing instead on someone else. When she offered an opinion, it was gently reframed, refined, or dismissed through redirection rather than disagreement. No one raised a voice. No one broke etiquette. No one apologized. That made it difficult to challenge. In private spaces, the pressure sharpened. Corrections arrived as reminders. Suggestions arrived as expectations. Ava's choices, from clothing to timing, became topics of discussion framed as guidance. You'll learn, this is how it's usually done. People will expect more in rooms like this. Each comment landed softly. Each one carried weight. Ava felt embarrassment without cause. She questioned herself without reason. She replayed interactions late at night, searching for errors she might have made. The humiliation did not come from insults. It came from implication, from the sense that she was being measured against a standard she had never been shown, from the feeling that she occupied space on permission rather than belonging. She adjusted instinctively. She smiled more carefully. She spoke less freely. She watched others before acting. The moments stacked quietly. A comment here, a correction there, a glance that lingered too long. None of them justified confrontation alone. Together, they formed an environment Ava had to navigate constantly. And because no one else reacted, she wondered if the discomfort existed only within her. That uncertainty became its own burden. By the time Ava recognized the pattern clearly, she was already carrying it alone. The change in Ava did not announce itself. It unfolded slowly, through choices that felt practical at the time. She began to arrive later to gatherings. Not late enough to be noticed, just late enough to avoid prolonged attention. She positioned herself near edges of rooms instead of centers. She stayed close to familiar faces and avoided spaces where scrutiny felt heavier. Her laughter softened. Her voice lowered. Her presence narrowed. Ava stopped initiating conversations. She responded when spoken to, careful with her words, deliberate with her tone. She chose listening over sharing, observation over participation. This was not withdrawal. It was protection. She learned which topics felt safe and which invited correction. She learned when to excuse herself politely and when to remain still. She measured each moment before stepping into it. Social spaces once shared with Easton now felt different. She stood beside him, but not fully with him. She let him lead interactions. She allowed others to engage him directly, even when she had something to add. People noticed the shift without naming it. They described Ava as reserved, as quiet, as private. No one asked why. Ava's world grew smaller in response. She declined invitations that once felt manageable. She limited exposure to settings that left her tense afterward. She prioritized peace, even if it meant absence. In private, she told herself this was temporary. Just until things settled. Just until expectations softened. Just until familiarity replaced judgment. But each step back reinforced a pattern. The less Ava participated, the less she was expected to. The quieter she became, the easier it was to overlook her. Her shrinking did not protect her position. It reduced it. She began to feel like a guest in spaces connected to her own life, like someone passing through rather than belonging. This loss of social ground did not come from a single decision. It came from many small adjustments made in the name of comfort. Ava told herself she was choosing peace. What she did not see yet was how peace, when achieved through retreat, slowly costs visibility. And visibility, once lost, is difficult to reclaim. Ethan felt the shift before he understood it. It arrived as absence rather than conflict. Ava still attended events. She still smiled. She still stood beside him. Yet something in her presence had thinned, like a room after furniture is moved without explanation. He noticed she spoke less on the drive home. He noticed she grew quieter during dinners with family. He noticed she tired earlier than she used to. When he asked, her answers stayed gentle. "I'm fine. It was a long day. I just need rest." Ethan believed her. He trusted calm. He trusted that if something serious existed, it would surface clearly. He had learned to associate raised voices with problems, not silence. In his world, issues announced themselves. Meetings escalated. Negotiations stalled. Numbers dropped. Those were problems he knew how to address. This felt different. Ava did not complain. She did not ask him to intervene. She did not name specific moments. So Ethan assumed nothing demanded action. He told himself peace meant success. No arguments, no scenes, no ultimatums. He mistook restraint for resolution. When he observed Ava stepping back socially, he framed it as preference. When she excused herself early, he assumed fatigue. When she avoided certain gatherings, he believed she needed space. He respected that. Ethan valued autonomy. He did not push her to perform. He did not force her into rooms she no longer enjoyed. He believed giving space honored her needs. What he did not realize was how easily space can turn into distance when no one names why it exists. He also trusted his mother's tone at face value. Her words stayed polite when he was present. Her guidance sounded reasonable. Her demeanor felt composed. He believed the environment remained stable. Ethan did not ask Ava to endure. He did not instruct her to stay silent. But he also did not step in where silence had already taken hold, because peace felt easier than confrontation, and because nothing had broken yet. He believed love protected itself naturally. He did not yet understand that love, when unguarded, erodes quietly long before it fails. Ava chose endurance because it felt familiar. Honesty in those moments felt risky. Each time she considered speaking, she weighed the cost. Not the cost to herself, but the cost to everyone else. She imagined the tension that might follow, the explanations required, the discomfort that would linger in shared spaces. She asked herself quiet questions. Would this create distance between Ethan and his family? Would this place him in the middle? Would this change how people looked at her afterward? Ava believed love required restraint, so she endured. When comments unsettled her, she absorbed them. When moments embarrassed her, she told herself they would pass. When she felt overlooked, she reasoned that intention mattered more than impact. She chose harmony over clarity. This choice did not come from fear of speaking. It came from loyalty. Ava did not want to fracture what still felt whole. She did not want to turn discomfort into division. She also believed timing mattered. She told herself she would speak later, when things slowed down, when pressure eased, when she had the right words. Later kept moving. In the meantime, endurance became her language. She learned how to hold discomfort without showing strain. She learned how to smile through moments that asked for response. She learned how to protect others from the weight she carried. Each act of endurance felt noble in isolation. Together, they formed silence. Ava did not see herself as dishonest. She saw herself as careful. She believed honesty, delivered at the wrong moment, could cause harm. What she did not see was how withholding truth can also cause harm. How unspoken pain reshapes behavior. How endurance, when repeated, trains others to expect it. She grew tired without knowing why. She felt distant without understanding how far she had traveled from herself. Still, She stayed quiet. Because endurance felt like love. Because honesty felt like disruption. By the time Ava realized how much she had carried alone, the habit of endurance had already taken root. And habits, once formed, are difficult to break without consequence. From the outside, the pattern became clear long before Ava named it. Each moment added weight. Each silence stretched longer. Each choice to endure tightened the space around her. The frustration did not come from one decision. It came from repetition. Viewers see what characters often cannot. They notice how many times Ava swallowed words. How often she stepped back when respect should have stepped forward. How many chances passed without protection. The pressure builds because the outcome feels avoidable. A single honest conversation early on might have shifted direction. A boundary stated calmly might have reset expectation. A moment of clarity might have prevented years of quiet strain. And yet, Ava's choices make sense. She loved deeply. She believed in patience. She trusted calm more than confrontation. That is what makes the frustration sharper. Because endurance looks noble until it becomes costly. Because silence feels kind until it becomes permission. Because love, when unprotected, begins to demand more than it should. The audience feels the tension rising. They see Ava shrinking while others expand. They see Ethan trusting peace without questioning its source. They see small moments stacking into something heavier than any single event. This is where many people recognize themselves. The choice between speaking early or enduring longer. The hope that patience will correct behavior without conflict. The belief that love should not require confrontation. And yet, the question presses closer. How much silence is too much? At what point does endurance stop being strength? When does love require defense instead of patience? Before this story continues, pause here. Should Ava have spoken earlier? Or was she right to endure for the sake of peace? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your perspective matters here. Because the answer is not simple. And the cost of silence is not always visible until it arrives all at once. The day arrived with careful planning. Weeks of preparation folded into a single afternoon meant to reflect generosity, growth, and progress. The foundation event stood as a public marker of Ethan's success, but also as a statement of values. Education, health, opportunity, words repeated across invitations and banners. The venue carried quiet elegance, clean lines, open space, light that encouraged movement rather than stillness. Guests arrived in measured waves, greeted by staff trained to maintain flow without intrusion. Ava arrived beside Ethan. She wore composure the way she always did. Nothing dramatic, nothing attention-seeking. Her presence remained calm, supportive, deliberate. She understood the rhythm of events like this. When to step forward, when to stay slightly back, when to listen. Ethan moved with ease. This was his world now. Conversations shifted as he passed. Donors greeted him with familiarity. Colleagues waited for moments of access. Ava stayed near, not clinging, not distant. She exchanged polite greetings. She thanked contributors. She listened as stories unfolded about impact and reach. She felt the familiar tension settle in her chest, the one that came with public spaces tied to expectation. Still, she held steady. This event mattered. It mattered because it symbolized years of work. It mattered because it carried Ethan's name. It mattered because it reflected the image others would take home with them. Ava understood this weight. She had learned how to exist in these spaces without disrupting flow. She had learned how to move through attention without claiming it. She believed this was part of partnership. As the program progressed, speakers took turns. Applause rose and fell in practiced rhythm. Cameras shifted angles. Attendees adjusted posture. Everything followed plan, until it didn't. Because moments like these feel controlled until someone decides control belongs to them alone. And when power chooses to assert itself publicly, the room changes before anyone can stop it. Ava felt that change before she understood it. The crowd thickened as the program reached its center. Cameras moved with purpose, tracking faces already familiar to the public. Reporters stood at the edges, ready to capture moments that fit clean narratives. Donors leaned closer to one another, voices low, smiles practiced. Applause arrived on cue. It rose when names were announced. It softened when speakers paused. It swelled again when achievements were highlighted. Ethan stepped forward when called. The room responded with recognition earned through years of effort. He spoke with clarity, thanking partners, outlining goals, reinforcing values. His tone remained steady, confident, without excess. Ava stood a short distance away, close enough to signal unity, far enough to allow space. She watched the audience as much as she watched him. She noticed how eyes followed movement, how attention shifted quickly, how approval traveled in waves across the room. Public spaces like this carried their own rules. Everyone understood them. Stand where you belong. Smile when expected. Move when directed. Ava followed these rules without difficulty. She adjusted her stance when staff gestured. She stepped aside when donors approached Ethan. She waited patiently as conversations unfolded around her. From the outside, nothing appeared wrong. The setting was polished. The tone was respectful. The atmosphere felt controlled. That control made what followed more jarring. Because when a boundary is crossed in a space designed for order, the impact echoes louder. The contrast sharpens the moment. The silence that follows feels heavier. Ava sensed eyes shifting before words arrived. She felt attention tighten around her without knowing why. The applause faded, replaced by a quieter hum of expectation. She turned slightly, responding to movement beside her. The press adjusted their focus. Guests leaned subtly closer. Something was about to happen. Public moments rarely allow for correction. They move forward, whether people are ready or not. Once attention settles, every action becomes part of record. Ava felt that awareness settle in her body. This was no longer a private discomfort. This was no longer a small correction. The space itself seemed to wait, and in that pause, Ava understood that whatever came next would not be contained. It would not be softened later. It would not be forgotten. Public spaces remember. Evelyn arrived late, not rushed, not apologetic. She moved through the space with practiced ease, greeting familiar faces, accepting acknowledgement without pause. Her presence shifted attention even before she spoke. People made room. Conversations adjusted. She approached Ethan first, placing a brief kiss on his cheek, a gesture meant for display as much as affection. Cameras caught it. Smiles followed. Then she turned toward Ava. Her expression held courtesy, but nothing warm. Her eyes moved over Ava with appraisal, not greeting, the kind that measures rather than welcomes. Evelyn spoke clearly, loud enough to be heard, calm enough to sound reasonable. "You should step back," she said, her tone even. These moments suit women with polish. Ava felt the words land before she felt the meaning. The sentence sounded like guidance. The intent did not. Ethan turned at once. His body angled toward them. "Mother," he said, a warning carried in restraint. Evelyn did not stop. She reached for Ava's sleeve, straightening it without permission. Her fingers lingered a moment too long. She glanced at Ava's shoes, then away, as if noting an error already decided. The room shifted. People noticed. Not fully, not yet, but enough. A few faces tightened. A few smiles froze. The press adjusted position, sensing tension without knowing its shape. Ava stepped aside. Evelyn followed. Near the edge of the stage, where attention still hovered, Evelyn leaned closer. Her voice lowered, but not enough. "You don't understand how things work here," she said. "You make things look unfinished." That was the line. Not the words themselves, but where they landed. In public, in front of witnesses, in a space Ava had worked so hard to navigate without disruption. Evelyn had crossed from control into domination, from guidance into dismissal. This was no longer about standards. This was about position. Ava did not argue. She did not explain. She did not defend herself. She straightened. The decision formed before the action, because when dignity is challenged openly, silence is no longer protection. It is surrender. The movement was small, so small it almost escaped notice until sound followed it. Evelyn's hand lifted, guided by certainty rather than anger. There was no rush, no loss of control. The gesture carried intention, not impulse. Contact came clean. A sharp sound cut through the air, brief and unmistakable. Not loud enough to echo, yet loud enough to silence everything else. Conversation stopped. Applause died where it stood. Music fell away. Breath paused across the room. Ava did not stumble. Her body absorbed the moment without reaction. She did not raise her hands. She did not step back. She did not speak. Her head turned slightly from the force. That was all. The restraint of her response made the moment heavier. Evelyn's posture remained upright. Her expression did not change. She stood as if the action required no explanation, as if authority justified the gesture. The press froze for a fraction of a second before instinct took over. Lenses adjusted. Focus sharpened. This was no longer a celebration. This was a rupture. Ava stood still, feeling the heat spread across her face. Not pain. Awareness. The clarity that arrives when something irreversible has happened. She looked around. Some guests looked away. Some stared. Some waited for someone else to act. No one moved. The humiliation did not come from the contact. It came from the silence that followed, from the understanding that this moment now belonged to everyone present, from the knowledge that it would be remembered exactly as it occurred. Ava felt something settle inside her. Not anger, not shock. Resolve. Because restraint has limits. And when those limits are crossed publicly, dignity demands response, even without words. Ethan moved the moment sound registered as truth. Not when Evelyn lifted her hand, not when Ava stepped back, but when silence claimed the room. He turned fully then, instinct finally breaking through disbelief. His body placed itself between them in a single step, firm and unmistakable. "That ends now," he said. His voice stayed controlled, but the edge beneath it was clear. This was not a request. It was a line drawn too late. Evelyn reacted with words, not apology. She spoke of respect. She spoke of embarrassment. She spoke of standards that had been ignored. Her explanation arrived quickly, practiced, shaped to sound reasonable to those listening from a distance. Ethan did not engage the argument. He did not debate intent. He did not justify the moment. He looked at Ava instead. And in her eyes, he saw something he had missed for too long. Finality, not fury, not accusation, understanding. He reached for her arm, gentle, uncertain. The gesture arrived after the damage had already settled, after the moment had crossed from repairable into memory. "I'm sorry," he said, low enough that only she could hear. The apology mattered. It simply arrived after protection was needed, not before. Ethan realized then what silence had hidden. How often Ava had absorbed discomfort without naming it. How many moments had passed without defense, because nothing had seemed urgent enough. This was urgent, and still, it was late. The room remained frozen around them. Guests watched without comment. Cameras waited for the next image. Ethan had stepped in. But stepping in after harm does not undo harm. It only confirms that it was allowed long enough to happen. Ava did not need time to think. The decision arrived whole, formed in the space between sound and silence. She looked at Ethan once, not to accuse him, not to ask anything of him, simply to understand where she stood now that everything had been revealed. She saw remorse. She saw shock. She saw love. What she did not see was safety. Not here, not anymore. The room pressed in around her, full of people waiting to see what she would do next. Waiting for emotion, waiting for reaction, waiting for a scene. Ava gave them none. She reached up and adjusted her sleeve where Evelyn had touched her earlier. The gesture was small, deliberate, a reclaiming. She straightened her posture, not in defiance, in dignity. Then she stepped back, not away from Evelyn, away from the life that had required this endurance. Ava understood something with quiet certainty. No apology could erase what had happened. No explanation could soften its meaning. No promise could return what had been taken. This moment was not about forgiveness. It was about clarity. She had protected peace long enough. She had chosen patience until patience became permission. She had trusted love to defend itself. It had not. The decision was not emotional. It was practical. She would leave. She would take space. She would reclaim safety. Not tomorrow. Not after conversation. Now. Ava did not raise her voice. She did not announce her choice. She simply turned and walked away, her steps measured, her expression composed. Behind her, the room remained suspended. Ahead of her, something solid formed. Freedom. Ava returned home long after the event ended. The house stood unchanged, lights still low, furniture still in place. Nothing looked different, yet nothing felt familiar. She did not rush. She removed her shoes by the door and set them neatly aside. She washed her hands. She moved through rooms with intention, as if each step mattered. Then she opened the closet. Ava packed slowly, not because she hesitated, but because she was precise. Each item folded with care, each choice deliberate. She selected clothing that felt like herself, not what others preferred. Simple pieces, comfortable ones, things that did not carry expectation. She left behind what no longer fit. Not just clothes, symbols, versions of herself shaped by patience rather than choice. There was no music playing, no phone in her hand, no one speaking. The silence felt steady, not heavy. She paused at photographs once. Only once. She did not take them. She did not turn them face down. She acknowledged them, then moved on. This was not erasure. It was separation. Ava packed documents next. Practical things. Identification, records, items that supported independence. She placed them carefully in a folder, then into her bag. She checked the time and continued. The calm surprised her. She had expected shaking hands, tears, a surge of emotion that might slow her down. None came. The clarity she felt at the event stayed with her, guiding each movement. This was not reaction. It was conclusion. She packed what she needed and nothing more. She did not search for justification. She did not rehearse explanations. She did not prepare arguments. She understood something now. Leaving did not require permission. Strength did not need volume. By the time her bag was closed, Ava felt lighter, not relieved, resolved. She placed the bag by the door and waited, because she knew he would come looking for her. Ethan found her in the bedroom doorway. He did not speak at first. He took in the open suitcase, the folded clothes, the absence forming in front of him. His breath caught, not from surprise, but from recognition. This was real. This was happening. Ava, he said, quiet, careful. Please. He crossed the room in slow steps, hands open, as if sudden movement might push her farther away. He spoke quickly then, words stacking on each other. He promised distance. He promised boundaries. He promised it would never happen again. He said he would confront his mother. He said he would change how events worked. He said he would protect her. He said everything he had not said soon enough. Ava listened. She did not interrupt. She did not turn away. She allowed him to speak because she respected the truth in his fear. She could see how much he meant every word. But sincerity did not erase timing. Ethan reached for her hand. She let him hold it for a moment. His grip tightened, then loosened, like he was afraid to hold too hard. I didn't see it, he said. I should have. I didn't know it had gone this far. Ava nodded once. Not in agreement, in acknowledgement. She understood his regret. She understood his shock. She understood that this moment had forced clarity on him. What she also understood was this: promises made after harm arrive carrying history. They must work harder. They must stand against what already happened. Ethan spoke of the future. Ava heard the past. Each promise reminded her of moments when protection was needed without request. Each assurance echoed times she had stayed quiet to preserve peace. She did not argue. She did not accuse. She waited until his words slowed, until his breath steadied, until the room held still again. Then she spoke. Not loudly, not urgently, with finality. I believe you, Ava said. Her voice stayed even. No tremor, no distance. Ethan looked up at her then, hope flashing across his face, quick and fragile. I do, she repeated. I believe you mean every word. That was the truth. She believed he wanted to change. She believed he felt remorse. She believed this moment had opened his eyes in a way nothing else had. But belief was no longer enough. Ava had lived too long on hope alone. Hope that patience would soften behavior. Hope that time would correct imbalance. Hope that love would step in before damage formed. Hope had asked her to wait. Safety asked her to act. I can't stay, she said. The words landed gently, but they did not bend. Ethan shook his head. We can fix this. I'll do whatever it takes. Ava met his eyes. That's the problem, she said quietly. It shouldn't take this. She did not explain further. She did not list moments. She did not recount pain. She had already carried those alone. She understood something clearly now. Safety is not built on promises. It is built on patterns. What happened today was not a break from the past. It was the past becoming visible. Ava knew that if she stayed, hope would ask her to endure again, to wait for change, to trust timing over action. She could not do that anymore. I need space, she said. Not to punish you, to protect myself. Ethan's face tightened. He wanted to argue, to negotiate, to find words that would change her mind. Ava held up her hand. Please don't make this harder, she said. Choosing safety did not mean she stopped loving him. It meant she stopped abandoning herself. She picked up her bag and slung it over her shoulder. The weight felt manageable. Right, this isn't anger, she added. It's clarity, and with that, hope stepped aside. Safety took its place. The separation did not unfold in public. There were no statements released, no explanations offered to satisfy curiosity, no details shared beyond what was necessary. Ava insisted on privacy from the start. She handled arrangements through proper channels, speaking only when clarity was required. She chose discretion over display, resolution over reaction. Ethan respected that. He did not challenge her boundaries. He did not drag the process into prolonged negotiation. He moved through it with restraint, honoring her wish for calm even as it cost him deeply. Papers were signed without drama. Assets were divided with fairness. Timelines were agreed upon without argument. The process reflected what Ava needed. Quiet. She relocated without announcement. She closed one chapter without rewriting it for an audience. She did not seek sympathy. She did not assign blame. Those closest to them noticed the absence before they understood the reason. Questions arose, but answers stayed minimal. It didn't work. We chose peace, nothing more. Ava found relief in how little she had to explain. Silence, when chosen freely, felt different. It no longer demanded endurance. It offered space. Ethan struggled more visibly. He withdrew from gatherings. He reduced family interaction. He focused on work because it gave him structure when everything else felt uncertain. Yet even in his pain, he honored Ava's terms. No pressure, no pursuit, no public regret. The quiet separation carried weight because it lacked spectacle. There was no moment for onlookers to consume, no chaos to distract from the truth. Two people had reached a limit, and instead of fighting publicly, they chose distance. For Ava, this mattered. It allowed her to leave without being defined by the break. It allowed her to move forward without carrying a story she never wanted to tell. The divorce ended a marriage. It also returned something Ava had not felt in a long time: control over her own life. The aftermath did not arrive loudly. There were no slammed doors echoing in memory, no scenes replayed in public spaces, no anger spilling into places it did not belong. What remained was weight. Ava felt it in quiet mornings when routines shifted, in evenings that ended earlier than expected, in moments when she reached for habits that no longer existed. The absence carried presence. She grieved privately, not the end itself but what the marriage had meant, the calm they once shared, the future she believed patience would protect. Some nights, the stillness pressed in. She allowed it. She did not distract herself with noise. She did not rush healing. She sat with the weight and let it pass through her instead of resisting it. Strength did not mean denial. It meant acknowledgement without collapse. Ethan carried his own weight. Regret followed him into meetings. Silence followed him home. He replayed moments he had overlooked, conversations he had accepted too easily, trusts he had mistaken for stability. Yet even in pain, neither of them reached for chaos. There were no late calls, no emotional bargaining, no attempts to reopen what had been closed. That restraint mattered. It allowed grief to remain honest. It allowed healing to begin without confusion. It kept dignity intact on both sides. Ava understood something essential during this time. Walking away without screaming did not lessen the pain. It refined it. The quiet forced reflection. The lack of drama removed distraction. There was nowhere to hide from truth when nothing else competed for attention. She rebuilt slowly, one decision at a time, one boundary at a time. The weight did not vanish overnight, but it shifted. It became something she could carry without losing herself. This was the strength no one applauds, the courage that does not announce itself, the resilience built through calm action rather than force. And in that quiet strength, Ava began to step into a life shaped by choice, not endurance. Ava rebuilt her life without announcing it. There was no dramatic reset, no declaration of independence, just a series of choices made quietly, each one placing her a little farther from what she had left behind and closer to who she needed to become. She chose a place that felt neutral, not symbolic, not temporary, somewhere she could breathe without explanation. The rooms were modest, the neighborhood calm, nothing demanded performance. Her days followed a new rhythm. She woke early. She planned her time carefully. She filled her hours with purpose rather than distraction. Ava returned to work on her own terms. She selected projects that allowed focus without pressure. She valued environments where respect did not need negotiation, where expectations were clear and boundaries honored. She rebuilt confidence through consistency. Each completed task reminded her she was capable. Each quiet success reinforced trust in herself. She expanded her world slowly. New routines, new acquaintances, no rush to replace what she had lost, no attempt to prove she was thriving. Healing did not require an audience. Ava also learned how to sit with solitude without fear. Evenings felt different at first. The quiet stretched longer. She noticed habits that no longer fit. She adjusted. She read more. She walked often. She allowed herself rest without guilt. The absence of constant vigilance surprised her. She no longer scanned rooms for tension. She no longer prepared responses before words arrived. Her shoulders relaxed without effort. This freedom came with moments of grief. She missed the version of love she believed in. She mourned the future she had imagined. She allowed those feelings to exist without judgment. Rebuilding did not mean forgetting. It meant choosing differently. Over time, Ava noticed a shift inside herself. Her thoughts grew clearer. Her instincts sharpened. She trusted discomfort as information rather than something to dismiss. Living alone taught her something patience never had. That peace is not the absence of conflict. It is the presence of safety. And safety begins with choosing yourself, even when no one is watching. The realization arrived quietly. No dramatic symptoms, no sudden urgency, just a pause in Ava's routine that felt unfamiliar. A delay she could not explain away. A sense that something inside her had shifted. When the confirmation came, Ava sat with it alone. She did not reach for a phone. She did not seek reassurance. She allowed the truth to settle before responding to it. 2 lives had begun without announcement. The timing was undeniable. The math left no room for confusion. This was not a question of possibility. It was clarity. Ava felt fear first, not of motherhood, of responsibility. She thought of stability, of safety, of the life she had just begun rebuilding. She thought of the past she had left behind and the boundaries she had fought to establish. Then she felt something steadier. Resolve. Ava understood what this choice required. It meant raising children without shared custody. It meant answering questions alone. It meant strength without backup. She considered every option with care, not through pressure, through honesty. She asked herself what kind of environment she wanted her children to know, what values would guide them, what kind of presence they would feel every day. She chose peace, not convenience, not fear. Peace. Ava did not inform Ethan, not out of punishment, out of protection. She knew contact would reopen doors she was not ready to walk through. She knew explanations would invite negotiation instead of clarity. She chose to secure her footing before involving anyone else. Her decision was not made in anger. It was made in alignment. She adjusted her plans with intention. She saved carefully. She reorganized her work. She sought medical care with consistency and respect. Each appointment reinforced her certainty. She was capable. She was prepared. She was grounded. Pregnancy did not pull Ava backward. It anchored her forward. The life growing inside her did not feel like a complication. It felt like responsibility made tangible. And for the first time in years, Ava did not question her right to choose her path. She trusted herself fully. Motherhood reshaped Ava's days before it reshaped her identity. The twins arrived with clarity, not chaos. Two distinct presences, two different rhythms. From the beginning, Ava understood that structure would be their foundation. She built it carefully. Mornings followed routine. Meals arrived on schedule. Rest was protected, not negotiated. Ava believed consistency created safety. She believed children learn trust through predictability, so she organized their world with intention, even when exhaustion pressed in. She named their needs without confusion. Lucas needed movement. Lily needed quiet. Ava honored both without comparison. She spoke to them calmly, even when they could not yet understand her words. She believed tone mattered before language. She believed children absorbed peace long before they learned how to describe it. Their home reflected that belief. No raised voices. No sudden tension. No fear lingering in corners. Ava did not hide hardship from them, but she did not burden them with it either. She taught through example rather than instruction, through patience rather than pressure. As the twins grew, Ava encouraged independence. They learned to express preferences early. They learned their voices mattered. They learned boundaries were respected, not punished. When questions came, Ava answered honestly, without bitterness. She did not speak poorly of their father. She did not frame absence as rejection. She simply told them their family was built differently, and that difference did not mean deficiency. Raising twins alone required stamina. Some days stretched long. Some nights tested her resolve. But Ava never questioned her choice. She watched them grow secure, curious, grounded. Their laughter filled rooms without tension. Their disagreements resolved without fear. They learned repair instead of silence. Ava noticed something profound. The peace she fought for herself became the environment her children took for granted. They did not learn how to endure discomfort quietly. They learned how to name it safely. That difference mattered. Raising Lucas and Lily reinforced Ava's truth. Love thrives where structure exists. Safety grows where voices are honored. And every day she chose calm action over reaction, Ava felt the quiet reward of knowing she had built something lasting, not through perfection, through presence. Ethan's career reached heights he once imagined would bring peace. The company expanded across borders. Partnerships multiplied. His name carried weight in rooms built for influence. Applause followed him into conferences. Recognition arrived without effort. From the outside, everything worked. Inside, something stayed unresolved. Ethan filled his days with motion, meetings stacked back to back. Travel replaced rest. Success demanded attention, and he gave it willingly because stillness felt heavier. He avoided places that reminded him of what he had lost. Home felt empty. Family gatherings felt strained. Silence followed him longer than noise ever had. He told himself this was the cost of ambition. Yet even as numbers rose, satisfaction did not. Ethan noticed the absence most in quiet moments. Early mornings when no one waited for him. Evenings when accomplishments had no one to share them with. Achievements landed without celebration. He replayed memories he once dismissed. Moments Ava grew quiet. Times she stepped back. Questions he never asked. Regret did not arrive all at once. It arrived in pieces, small, persistent, difficult to ignore. Ethan tried to compensate through work. He funded initiatives. He supported causes. He built structures meant to reflect values he believed in. These efforts mattered, but they did not touch the space Ava once held. He learned a hard truth. Success multiplies what already exists. It does not replace what is missing. Without Ava, his world felt efficient but hollow. He had protected peace by avoiding conflict, and in doing so, he had lost connection. Ethan did not blame anyone else. He accepted responsibility quietly. He understood that protection delayed becomes permission. That leadership without presence creates distance. His empire continued to grow. His joy did not. And for the first time, Ethan understood that achievement cannot heal neglect. It can only distract from it for a while. Evelyn felt the change before it was spoken. It showed in invitations that arrived less often, in updates shared later than before, in conversations that stayed brief and formal. Distance settled around her without confrontation. Ethan did not argue with her. He did not accuse. He simply stopped relying on her presence the way he once had. Decisions were made without consultation. Appearances were handled without coordination. Evelyn noticed. At first, she dismissed it as busyness. Growth demanded space. Influence required focus. She told herself this was temporary. But time passed, and the pattern held. Family gatherings grew smaller. Private moments disappeared. The closeness she once expected no longer existed. Evelyn had believed authority ensured connection, that guidance guaranteed relevance, that standards protected relationships. She had been wrong. Distance does not announce itself. It settles. Evelyn reflected often, though she rarely admitted it aloud. She replayed the event in her mind, not with remorse first, but with disbelief. How one moment had altered everything. How quickly her position shifted. She justified her intent for a long time. She had meant to correct. She had meant to preserve image. She had meant to protect her son's standing. Intent did not undo outcome. As years passed, Evelyn lived with formality instead of warmth. Respect replaced closeness. Politeness replaced trust. She saw Ethan less. When she did, conversations stayed shallow. Topics avoided what mattered. The bond she assumed unbreakable now felt conditional. Evelyn learned something she had never considered before. Control does not create loyalty. It creates compliance until it creates distance. She had lost access, not because she was challenged, but because she was no longer trusted. This consequence did not arrive through punishment. It arrived through absence, and absence, when chosen deliberately, speaks louder than any confrontation ever could. Time clarified what emotion once blurred. Years passed, and patterns revealed themselves without commentary. Ava built a life rooted in safety and presence. Ethan built an empire defined by scale and influence. Evelyn lived within distance, shaped by her own certainty. Each path carried consequence. Ava's growth came through attention to what mattered daily. She chose environments that honored her voice. She raised children who felt secure enough to speak. Her success measured itself in stability, not recognition. Ethan's achievements continued to multiply, yet they did not fill the space neglect had created. He learned that progress without protection leaves relationships exposed. That silence, when trusted too long, trains loss. Evelyn's authority did not preserve connection. It narrowed it. Standards enforced without care created separation rather than respect. The contrast became undeniable. One life expanded through calm boundaries. One life expanded through ambition alone. One life contracted through control. The moral stood firm without explanation. Success does not heal neglect. Power does not replace presence. Achievement does not undo harm left unaddressed. Love requires protection in the moment, not regret afterward. Respect must be defended where it is tested, not discussed once it is gone. What Ava learned through pain, she passed on through example. What Ethan learned through loss, he carried quietly. What Evelyn learned through distance, she lived with daily. There were no villains in this story, only choices. Some made early, some delayed too long. And each choice shaped a future. This clarity did not arrive with triumph or bitterness. It arrived with understanding. That dignity preserved in time becomes peace. That silence unchecked becomes permission. That love unprotected fractures, even when it still exists. The story does not end here, but everything that follows rests on this truth. The conference unfolded with precision. A modern venue filled with glass and open space, designed to move people smoothly from session to session. Attendees flowed through wide corridors, badges visible, conversations layered but controlled. Screens displayed schedules and themes centered on education, health, and long-term impact. Ethan arrived early. He preferred quiet before crowds gathered. It gave him time to orient himself, to review notes, to prepare for the roles he would play throughout the day. He moved through the lobby with familiarity, greeting colleagues, exchanging brief words, keeping pace with expectation. This setting felt comfortable. He had stood on stages like this countless times. He understood the rhythm, the pauses between panels, the timing of introductions, the careful balance between visibility and restraint. Applause echoed from distant rooms as sessions began. Staff guided attendees with subtle gestures. Coffee stations filled quickly, then cleared. Everything operated as planned. Ethan paused near the central atrium. From there, he could see movement across levels. People ascending stairs, groups forming, then dissolving. The space felt active, without feeling chaotic. He checked his schedule once more. Keynote address later in the afternoon. Meetings scheduled between sessions. A reception planned for the evening. Nothing unexpected. Then the room shifted. Not audibly, visually. Ethan noticed a stillness near one of the entrances. Not silence, but attention drawing inward. Conversations softened. Movement slowed slightly. He followed the direction of that focus without understanding why. Across the lobby, a woman stood speaking with a coordinator. Her posture was relaxed, her tone measured. She did not rush. There was something familiar in the way she held herself. Not memory, recognition. Ethan felt his breath pause as his mind caught up with what his body had already registered. The years between them collapsed into a single moment of awareness. This was not coincidence. The conference, built for progress and partnership, had delivered him back to the one place he had never resolved. Ava stood there, grounded and composed, as if the space had been waiting for her arrival all along. Ethan did not move at first. He watched instead. 5 years had passed, yet time had not erased her presence. It had refined it. Ava no longer carried the careful alertness he remembered. Her shoulders rested naturally. Her stance held ease rather than caution. She looked grounded, not guarded, not withdrawn, whole. Ethan noticed the difference immediately. It was not in her clothing or appearance, it was in how she occupied space. Ava no longer adjusted herself to fit rooms. The room adjusted around her without effort. She listened as someone spoke to her, nodding with interest. When she responded, her words carried clarity without apology. There was no rush in her movements, no need to manage perception. Ethan felt the weight of that change settle in his chest. This was not the woman who once softened herself to preserve harmony. This was not the woman who stepped back instinctively. This Ava stood firmly within herself. He realized then that time had given her something he never could. Distance. Distance from expectation. Distance from endurance. Distance from the need to be chosen. She glanced up then. Their eyes met across the space. Ava's expression did not shift. No shock crossed her face. No tension followed. She acknowledged him the way one acknowledges something known and no longer feared. Ethan felt exposed in that moment. He was the one caught off guard, the one unprepared, the one forced to confront the contrast between who he had become and who she now was. He took a step forward, then stopped. This was not a moment he could rush. Ava returned her attention to the conversation in front of her, finishing it calmly. When she turned back toward him, it was with intention, not hesitation. She walked toward him at an even pace. Ethan noticed how people instinctively made space for her. Not out of obligation, but respect. She stopped a short distance away. "Hello, Ethan," she said. Her voice carried no edge, no warmth meant to soothe him. Just presence. He answered her name softly, unsure which version of her stood before him now. In that moment, Ethan understood something painful and clear. Ava had not been waiting for him to find her. She had moved on. Ethan noticed them only after Ava stepped aside. 2 children stood a few feet behind her, close enough to touch, far enough to be independent. A boy and a girl. Similar height, similar curls. Their attention moved between the space around them and the woman they clearly trusted. Ava did not introduce them right away. She waited. The children observed Ethan openly, without fear or curiosity sharpened by instruction. They stood comfortably in their bodies, balanced and calm. The boy shifted his weight from one foot to the other, hands loose at his sides. The girl leaned slightly toward Ava, not hiding, simply anchored. Ethan's chest tightened. There was something unmistakable in their features. Not a single trait, but a pattern. The curve of a brow, the shape of their eyes when they focused, the quiet seriousness beneath their calm. Recognition arrived without argument. This was not assumption. This was certainty. Ava turned slightly, her hand resting briefly on each child's shoulder. The gesture was natural, practiced, protective, without being restrictive. "Lucas," she said gently, nodding toward the boy. "Lily," she added, her voice softening as she named the girl. The children responded to their names with ease. They did not look confused. They did not look surprised. This moment did not feel new to them in the way it felt new to him. Ethan felt the room narrow. Noise faded. Movement slowed. His focus fixed on the two lives standing in front of him, lives that had unfolded beyond his awareness. "How old are they?" he asked, though the answer was already forming in his mind. 4, Ava replied. The number landed with precision. 4 years of first steps. 4 years of first words. 4 years of questions he had never heard. Ethan swallowed hard, searching Ava's face for something. Accusation, bitterness, any sign that she wanted him to react. She offered none. The twins remained still, waiting without instruction. Their calm told him everything about how they had been raised. With structure, with safety, with truth. Ethan realized then that this was not a reveal designed to wound him. It was a reality that existed with or without his presence. And in that understanding, the ground beneath him shifted completely. Ethan's certainty did not come from resemblance alone. It came from details too specific to ignore. Lucas tilted his head when he listened, the same way Ethan did during long meetings. Lily's fingers traced the edge of Ava's sleeve absent-mindedly, a habit Ethan recognized from his own childhood when focus pulled him inward. Even their stillness felt familiar. They were not restless. They were observant. Children raised with boundaries. Ethan noticed how they stood close to each other without clinging, how they watched the room without fear, how they waited, patient and composed, as if they understood how to exist in adult spaces without being absorbed by them. These were not children accustomed to tension. They did not brace. They did not flinch. They did not seek approval. Ava had given them something solid. Ethan's mind moved through memories he had not accessed in years. Quiet dinners, mornings without rush, the calm he and Ava once protected together. He saw it now in their children, not as imitation, as inheritance. He felt grief rise, sharp and contained, not for what he had lost, for what he had missed. Ava watched him carefully, not to manage his reaction, but to assess his readiness. She saw understanding settle across his face. She saw the moment when recognition moved from surprise into responsibility. She did not interrupt it. Lucas shifted slightly, curiosity flickering in his eyes. Lily glanced up at Ava, seeking confirmation without words. Ava gave a small nod, steady and reassuring. The twins relaxed. That exchange told Ethan more than any explanation could. They trusted her completely. They felt safe enough to wait. Ethan realized then that recognition was not something he could claim. It had to be earned. This was not a moment for grand emotion, not a space for regret performed publicly. The details demanded respect, not reaction. And as Ethan absorbed them one by one, he understood that the life Ava had built was not an extension of his past. It was complete on its own. They moved to a quieter corridor, away from the main floor. Not hidden, just removed from the center of attention. Ava chose the space deliberately. Glass walls allowed light but muted sound. People passed by without pausing. Privacy existed without secrecy. Ethan followed a step behind. He did not reach for her. He did not interrupt. He waited. Ava spoke first. "I didn't plan this moment," she said, "but I won't avoid it." Her tone stayed level. There was no tremor, no rehearsed distance. She was not protecting herself from him anymore. She was simply standing in truth. Ethan nodded slowly. "I should have known," he said. Not as accusation, as recognition. Ava met his gaze. "You knew I needed safety," she replied. "You just didn't know how urgent it was." The words landed without force. Ethan exhaled, steadying himself. "I failed you." Ava did not agree or disagree. "This isn't about blame," she said. "It's about clarity." She explained timing calmly. How she left before she knew. How she chose space before certainty. how by the time certainty arrived, the path forward had already formed. Ethan listened without interruption. No defense, no explanation, just presence. I didn't reach out, Ava continued, because I needed to build something stable before opening that door. Not for me, for them. She glanced toward the twins through the glass. Ethan followed her gaze. I understand, he said. The admission mattered more than apology. This was not confrontation built on anger. It was conversation built on reality. Ava had not come to demand anything. Ethan had not come to claim anything. They stood between past and present without forcing either to bend. For the first time in years, truth passed between them without distortion. And that truth changed everything. Ava did not recount every detail. She did not list grievances. She did not revisit moments that no longer needed examination. She chose what mattered. I wasn't running from you, she said. I was running towards safety. Ethan absorbed the words fully. I know, he replied. There was no bitterness in his voice. Only acceptance. The kind that arrives when explanation no longer serves resistance. Ava explained her choices without defensiveness. How she built a life that did not require constant adjustment. How she raised children in an environment shaped by predictability and care. How she learned to trust herself without waiting for permission. Ethan did not interrupt. He did not ask why she waited. He did not question her silence. He understood now that her silence had been a boundary, not avoidance. I should have protected you, he said quietly. Ava nodded once. Not as agreement. As closure. We both learned something, she replied. Just at different costs. They stood there without urgency. No demands formed. No promises rushed forward. Only recognition. Ava made one thing clear. They have a life, she said. And it's peaceful. Anything that enters it has to respect that. Ethan accepted this without argument. I want to know them, he said. At your pace. On your terms. Ava studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded. This was not reconciliation. It was possibility built carefully. Truth did not need blame to matter. It did not require raised voices or emotional currency. It required honesty. It required restraint. And in that exchange, the past loosened its grip just enough for something new to form. Not as correction, as choice. Ava did not rush the next step. She understood what moments like the conference often created. Emotion, guilt, urgency disguised as responsibility. She refused all of it. Boundaries came first, not as punishment, as protection. She was clear without being harsh, calm without being flexible in the wrong places. She explained what access would look like and what it would not. No sudden appearances, no explanations demanded from the children, no roles assumed without discussion. Ethan listened. Ava made one thing unmistakable. Her life with the twins already worked. Their routines were stable. Their world felt secure. Nothing about that would be disrupted to accommodate anyone's adjustment. They don't need fixing, she said. They need consistency. She outlined structure. Short visits at first. Neutral settings. Time limited and predictable. No gifts meant to impress. No promises meant to soothe guilt. Presence mattered more than provision. Ava also set emotional boundaries. She would not revisit the marriage. She would not unpack the past repeatedly. The focus stayed on the children and what they needed now. If this becomes about us, she said, it stops. Ethan accepted this without resistance. Ava watched closely. Boundaries are not statements. They are tests. She paid attention to how Ethan responded when limits held firm. Whether he negotiated or respected. Whether he waited or pushed. He did not push. That mattered. Ava also protected the twins from confusion. She did not introduce Ethan with expectation. She did not label roles prematurely. She allowed space for curiosity without pressure. This is someone learning how to be here, she told them gently. No titles, no demands, just truth at their level. Ava's boundaries came from experience. She knew what happened when silence replaced clarity. She refused to repeat that pattern. This time, expectations were visible. Consequences clear. She did not ask Ethan to prove himself through words. She gave him structure instead. Because structure reveals character faster than emotion ever could. Ethan treated Ava's boundaries as instructions, not obstacles. He showed up when he said he would. Not early, not late, exactly on time. He arrived without spectacle, without rehearsed charm. No gifts in hand, no attempts to soften the moment with excess. Just presence. At first, the visits felt structured, almost formal. A park bench, a short walk, a shared snack. Conversations stayed light, focused on the moment rather than the past. Ethan did not overreach. He did not ask personal questions the children were not ready to answer. He did not position himself as authority. He followed Ava's lead, observing how she spoke to them, how she set limits, how she encouraged independence. He learned quietly. When visits ended, he left without lingering. He did not push for more time. He did not test flexibility. He respected the frame Ava had set. Week after week, he returned. Consistency replaced novelty. The children began to recognize him as a constant rather than an interruption. Someone who arrived predictably. Someone who listened more than he spoke. Ethan paid attention to details. Lucas's interest in building things. Lily's preference for drawing quietly nearby. He met them where they were instead of pulling them toward him. There were moments of awkwardness. Pauses where he did not know what to say. Silence he once would have filled with explanation. Now, he let it exist. Ethan also honored boundaries outside the visits. He did not call Ava unnecessarily. He did not ask for updates beyond what was offered. He did not attempt to influence routines. Trust grows fastest when restraint replaces urgency. Slowly, Ava noticed a pattern. Ethan's actions aligned with his words. His patience did not waver. His presence remained steady. No dramatic gestures followed. No declarations of change. Just repetition. And repetition, when consistent, becomes reliability. Ethan understood something fundamental. Redemption does not announce itself. It shows up quietly and stays. Lucas warmed first, not with excitement, with curiosity. He asked questions without hesitation. Simple ones, direct ones. He wanted to know how things worked. Why Ethan came on certain days. What he did when he was not there. Ethan answered honestly, without oversharing. He kept explanations grounded. He did not promise anything beyond what he could deliver. Lucas respected that. He began to bring small creations to their visits. A structure made of blocks. A drawing folded carefully in his pocket. He showed them without expectation, watching closely to see how Ethan responded. Ethan responded with attention. He asked how things were built. He listened. He encouraged without directing. Lucas relaxed in that space. He did not feel evaluated. He felt seen. Lily reacted differently. She observed. She stayed close to Ava at first, watching every interaction with quiet focus. She did not ask questions. She did not approach on her own. She measured consistency before offering trust. Ethan noticed. He did not force connection. He did not ask for affection. He allowed Lily to remain where she felt safe. Sometimes she sat nearby, drawing while he spoke with Lucas. Sometimes she watched from a distance, expression unreadable. Ethan accepted that distance without taking it personally. Ava noticed this most. Children read intention more clearly than adults. They sense pressure before words arrive. Lily felt none. Over time, her behavior shifted subtly. She placed drawings closer to Ethan. She responded when he spoke directly to her. She remained present instead of retreating. These changes were small. They mattered. The twins did not react the same, because they were not the same. Ava had built an environment where individuality was respected. Ethan followed that example. There were no shared breakthroughs, no single moment of connection. Trust formed unevenly. That was healthy. Ava recognized the significance. Ethan was not trying to be liked. He was trying to be reliable. And reliability allowed each child to move at their own pace without pressure. This difference in response did not create tension. It created truth. Trust did not arrive with a moment. It arrived with accumulation. Weeks turned into months, and the rhythm remained unchanged. Visits stayed predictable. Endings stayed calm. Ethan never tested flexibility, even when the familiarity grew. He allowed the structure to hold, understanding that consistency mattered more than access. Ava watched closely. not with suspicion, with awareness. Trust, for her, had become something measured, not assumed. She paid attention to how Ethan responded when the children struggled, when Lucas grew frustrated, when Lily withdrew into silence. Ethan did not correct emotion. He acknowledged it. "That looks hard," he said once to Lucas, without stepping in to fix it. Lucas worked through it himself. Lily noticed. She began to sit closer during visits. Not next to Ethan, but within reach. She no longer flinched when he spoke. She listened. Ethan learned patience he had never practiced before. He stayed engaged even when nothing seemed to happen. He remained present during quiet moments that offered no reward. He resisted the urge to accelerate progress. Time did the work for him. Trust formed not because Ethan explained himself well, but because he behaved predictably. The children learned his presence did not demand anything from them. Ava also felt the shift. She stopped bracing during visits. Her body relaxed. Her attention drifted elsewhere without fear that something would go wrong. That change mattered more than words. Trust extended beyond the children. Ethan honored decisions Ava made without question. When schedules changed, he adapted. When plans shifted, he accepted. He showed flexibility without entitlement. That reliability softened something Ava had kept firm. Not boundaries. Resistance. Trust did not erase memory. It created space alongside it. This was not redemption through performance. It was repair through repetition. Ethan understood that trust is not earned through intensity. It is earned through patience. And patience, practiced over time, reshapes relationships more effectively than urgency ever could. Ethan learned quickly that nothing about this process would move faster because he wanted it to. There were no moments where effort could replace time. No gesture large enough to compensate for years of absence. No apology that could shorten the distance trust required. He accepted that. When progress felt slow, he did not push. When visits remained brief longer than he hoped, he adjusted. When Ava reinforced boundaries that limited access, he respected them without argument. No shortcuts meant no bargaining. Ethan did not use work as leverage. He did not offer advantages. He did not promise futures that belonged to adults, not children. He understood that presence mattered only when it stayed consistent under limitation. Some weeks felt discouraging. Lucas grew quiet unexpectedly. Lily withdrew for days at a time. Ethan stayed. He did not demand reassurance. He did not look to Ava for confirmation that he was doing well. He trusted the process, instead of seeking validation. Ava noticed this restraint. She had seen people perform accountability before. She had seen remorse fade once access increased. What Ethan practiced was different. He allowed discomfort to exist without solving it quickly. He accepted that trust builds unevenly. He stayed even when progress felt invisible. There were moments Ava tested him deliberately. A schedule change announced late. A boundary restated firmly. A visit shortened without explanation. Ethan adapted each time. No frustration surfaced. No resentment leaked. This consistency mattered more than perfection. The children responded in their own time. Lucas began to ask when Ethan would return. Lily began to offer quiet smiles instead of observation alone. These shifts arrived gradually, without ceremony. Ava recognized the truth in front of her. Fatherhood, in this form, was not granted by biology or regret. It was earned through patience, humility, and repetition. Ethan did not rush to name himself anything. He allowed the children to define the relationship as it formed. That restraint protected them. No shortcuts meant no false security, no rushed attachments, no promises broken by impatience. And in choosing the long path, Ethan showed the one thing Ava needed to see before anything else could change. He was willing to do the work quietly. Evelyn did not arrive with ceremony. There was no announcement, no request framed as entitlement. The message came quietly, through proper channels, asking for a meeting without assumption. Ava agreed to listen, not out of duty, out of clarity. They met in a neutral space. Calm, public enough to feel safe, private enough to speak without interruption. Ava arrived first and chose her seat carefully. She did not position herself defensively. She did not prepare arguments. She waited. Evelyn arrived a few minutes later. Her posture was different now, less assured, less certain of her footing. She greeted Ava politely and sat across from her without attempting familiarity. "I owe you an apology," Evelyn said. She did not soften the statement. She did not justify it. She named the harm directly. She spoke of the public moment without reframing it. She acknowledged the power she had used and the damage it caused. Ava listened without reaction. Evelyn continued. She spoke about distance, about loss of closeness, about realizing too late that control had replaced care. She admitted she had mistaken authority for protection. "I thought I was preserving something," she said. "I was wrong." The words mattered. They still did not decide anything. Ava let the silence stretch before responding. Not to test Evelyn. To honor her own pace. "I hear you," Ava said. "And I accept the apology." Evelyn exhaled, relief flickering briefly. Ava did not continue. Acceptance was not forgiveness. Listening was not reconciliation. "I won't rebuild trust," Ava added calmly. "And I won't resume a relationship." Evelyn stiffened, then nodded. "I understand," she said. Ava held her gaze. "Apologies correct behavior," Ava continued. "They don't obligate access." She made her boundary clear without edge, without judgment. She did not punish Evelyn. She simply defined what would not return. Evelyn thanked her for listening. When she left, Ava remained seated for a moment longer. She felt no triumph, no bitterness, only confirmation. Forgiveness, when given freely, does not require proximity, and peace does not depend on restored closeness. Ava left the meeting without carrying anything new. That mattered. In the past, conversations like that lingered. Words replayed. Expectations formed without consent. This time, Ava felt none of it attach. Refusing obligation did not require confrontation. It required clarity. She understood how easily apologies can create pressure, how remorse can invite access, how listening can be mistaken for agreement. Ava refused all of those assumptions quietly. She did not owe forgiveness. She did not owe closeness. She did not owe restoration. Her decision came from alignment, not resistance. Ava reviewed her boundaries the way she reviewed any important structure. Carefully, without emotion attached. She asked herself one question. Does this protect the life I built? The answer guided everything. She explained her position to Ethan later, not defensively, not as a report, simply as information. "I listened," she said. "I set limits. That's all." Ethan accepted it without argument. That mattered. Years earlier, Ava might have softened her stance to avoid discomfort. She might have explained more, justified more, carried responsibility that was never hers. Now, she did none of that. Refusing obligation meant refusing to manage other people's feelings. It meant allowing disappointment to exist without absorbing it. It meant trusting that her boundaries were reasonable without seeking approval. Ava noticed how this choice affected her daily life. Her sleep stayed steady. Her focus remained clear. Her energy did not drain after difficult conversations. Peace held. She also recognized something important. Refusal was not rejection. It was selection. She chose what entered her life based on safety, not history. She chose presence over tradition. She chose consistency over expectation. This applied to everyone, including Ethan. Love, for Ava, no longer meant accommodation. It meant mutual care within defined limits. It meant no one crossing lines in the name of closeness. By refusing obligation, Ava preserved something fragile and valuable. Her autonomy. And autonomy, once reclaimed, becomes the foundation for every healthy connection that follows. Ethan did not ask Ava for credit. He did not ask for reassurance. He did not ask for hope. He let actions speak in spaces where words once failed. Change showed up in small, repeatable ways. He arrived when expected. He left when time ended. He followed routines without testing them. He accepted limits without pressing for exceptions. Ava watched quietly. She did not measure him against the past. She measured him against consistency. Ethan adjusted his life without announcement. He reduced travel when it conflicted with visits. He reshaped priorities without complaint. He learned the rhythms of the children's days and respected them. He stopped centering himself. When Lucas struggled, Ethan waited instead of stepping in. When Lily hesitated, He gave space without retreating. He learned to hold presence without control. This mattered. Ethan also changed how he handled discomfort. He no longer avoided tension by staying silent. He addressed issues early, calmly, and directly, not to assert authority, to protect stability. Ava noticed the difference most in what he did not do. He did not rush intimacy. He did not revisit old arguments. He did not ask Ava to trust him again. He behaved as if trust was something built forward, not repaired backward. That restraint rebuilt credibility. Ethan's growth did not come from regret alone. It came from discipline, from choosing patience when urgency tempted him, from accepting that accountability has no timeline he can control. Ava allowed herself to acknowledge this without softening her boundaries. Change did not mean access. Change did not mean reunion. It meant possibility. Ethan understood this. He treated Ava as a partner in decisions related to the children, not as someone to persuade. He respected her leadership in their lives, without feeling diminished by it. This balance mattered. For the first time, Ava saw Ethan operating without entitlement, without assumption, without leaning on history for leverage. He had learned something essential. Love that lasts is practiced daily. Respect is demonstrated, not declared. And in choosing action over appeal, Ethan became someone Ava could observe without tension, not because she owed him belief, because he earned credibility through time. Nothing shifted all at once. There was no moment Ava could point to and name as the return of love. No clear line where distance ended and closeness began. What changed arrived gradually, woven into ordinary days. It started with ease. Conversations extended without effort. Silence no longer felt guarded. Ava noticed she did not brace when Ethan entered a room. She noticed she did not prepare exits in her mind. That mattered. They spoke about practical things first. The children's schedules, small decisions, shared observations. Ethan listened without correcting. Ava spoke without filtering. Trust moved quietly. Later came moments that felt unfamiliar in a different way. Shared humor. A glance held longer than necessary. Comfort that did not ask for permission. Ava noticed her body respond before her thoughts did. She did not panic. She paid attention. Love returning did not feel like a pull backward. It felt like something forming under different conditions. No urgency, no intensity meant to erase the past, just steadiness. Ethan did not claim these moments. He did not label them. He did not lean into them prematurely. He allowed Ava to notice them without pressure. That restraint made space. Ava also stayed honest with herself. She did not romanticize progress. She did not ignore caution. She asked herself hard questions about readiness, about risk, about what she required now. She found that her answers were clearer than before. Love this time did not ask her to endure. It did not ask her to wait quietly. It did not ask her to shrink. It met her where she stood. The children sensed the shift without being told. They noticed warmth without confusion. Stability remained intact. Nothing in their world changed abruptly. That mattered most. Love returned slowly because it was no longer driven by longing. It was shaped by safety, by mutual awareness, by respect that did not need reinforcement. This version of love did not rush toward certainty. It earned it. Ava did not let emotion lead. Not this time. Even as closeness grew, safety stayed central. She measured every step against one standard. Did this protect the life she built? If the answer wavered, she paused. Safety was no longer something she hoped love would provide. It was something love had to respect from the start. Ava made this clear to Ethan without drama. The children come first, she said. Always. Ethan did not challenge it. He did not frame it as sacrifice. He understood the truth beneath it. Love without safety is not love. It is risk. They moved forward carefully. No merging lives. No sudden changes. No emotional shortcuts disguised as healing. Time remained the guide. Ethan continued to show up the same way, whether closeness increased or not. His consistency did not depend on reward. That steadiness mattered more than affection. Ava noticed how different this felt from before. She did not feel watched. She did not feel managed. She did not feel responsible for someone else's comfort. Love now sat beside safety instead of competing with it. There were conversations they did not rush, decisions they did not make, questions they allowed to remain unanswered. That restraint protected everyone. The children remained secure. Their routines held. Their world did not tilt because adults felt something again. Ava refused to let romance destabilize what she had fought to preserve. Ethan respected that fully. He did not ask Ava to choose between roles. He understood that any future would be built around protection, not promise. This was love with terms, not conditions meant to control, standards meant to sustain, and because safety came first, love did not feel fragile. It felt grounded, capable of growing without threat. Ava recognized the truth she had earned through loss. Love does not get better by surviving harm. It gets better by refusing to repeat it. This time she did not walk quietly to keep peace. She stood firmly and allowed love to meet her there. Ava no longer measured herself by what she endured. She moved through her days with certainty that did not require reinforcement. Decisions came from alignment, not fear. She trusted her instincts because she had tested them against reality and survived the results. Her confidence showed in quiet ways. She spoke plainly. She paused when something felt wrong. She chose rest without apology. There was no performance in her strength, no need to prove resilience. She had learned that wholeness is not loud. It is consistent. Ava's work reflected that change. She selected commitments that respected her time. She declined opportunities that demanded self-erasure. She valued clarity over praise. People noticed, not because she announced boundaries, because she kept them. Her posture carried ease. Her presence no longer shifted depending on who entered the room. She did not soften herself to maintain comfort. She allowed others to adjust instead. This was not hardness. It was self-respect practiced daily. Ava also forgave herself for the years she spent believing patience would protect love. She understood now that survival strategies are learned for a reason. They are not failures. They are signals. She honored the version of herself who stayed quiet. She honored the version who chose to leave. Both had kept her alive. Wholeness arrived when she stopped judging either. Her home reflected the same balance: calm spaces, predictable rhythms, warmth without tension. Nothing rushed, nothing withheld. Ava felt grounded because she lived in alignment with her values. Safety, clarity, respect. Those values guided every choice, from who she allowed close, to how she spent her time, to what she refused without explanation. Confidence did not make her unfeeling. It made her discerning. She could feel deeply without losing herself. She could love without surrendering dignity. She could stand firm without becoming closed. This was the lesson Ava carried forward. You do not become whole by winning battles. You become whole by choosing yourself consistently. And in that choice, she found peace that did not depend on anyone else changing. Lucas and Lily grew within a world shaped by steadiness. Their days followed patterns they understood. Mornings began without rush. Evenings closed without tension. They knew what to expect, and that knowledge gave them freedom. They moved confidently through their routines. Lucas built things with focus and patience. He tested ideas, adjusted plans, and learned through doing. When something failed, he did not freeze. He tried again. He trusted effort. Lily observed carefully. She noticed details others missed. She expressed herself through color and quiet gestures. She chose when to speak and when to listen, never pressured either way. Both children knew their voices mattered. When they disagreed, they were guided toward understanding rather than silence. When they felt upset, their emotions were named without dismissal. They learned early that feelings were information, not problems. This shaped how they related to others. They did not fear correction. They did not seek approval. They trusted adults because adults had proven trustworthy. Ethan's presence added consistency without disruption. He arrived as expected. He left as agreed. He respected routines instead of challenging them. The children noticed. They did not cling. They did not test limits. They accepted him naturally because he showed up the same way every time. Ava watched this with quiet gratitude. Thriving did not look like constant joy. It looked like security, like curiosity without fear, like rest without guilt. Lucas and Lily did not carry tension they could not name. They were not managing adult emotions. They were free to be children. That freedom mattered more than any explanation of the past. Ava understood something clearly. Children do not need perfection. They need protection. They need adults who choose clarity over comfort and consistency over control. Lucas and Lily grew within those choices. And because of that, they moved through the world with ease that could not be taught through words alone. Ethan no longer tried to lead from distance. He grounded himself in the rhythms of daily life, understanding that presence was not measured by grand gestures but by reliability. He planned his days around what mattered, not what impressed. He arrived when expected. He stayed attentive while present. He left without disrupting balance. This steadiness reshaped him. Ethan listened more than he spoke. He observed before acting. He asked questions without needing immediate answers. He learned that grounding comes from restraint, not control. Work no longer defined him. It supported his life instead of consuming it. He chose fewer commitments. He honored time limits. He declined opportunities that pulled him away from consistency. This discipline cost him visibility at times. He accepted that. Being grounded meant choosing alignment over expansion. Ethan also learned to sit with discomfort without avoidance. When guilt surfaced, he did not bury it in activity. He acknowledged it, then returned his focus to action that mattered now. This shift showed. He responded calmly when plans changed. He adapted without frustration. He remained patient when progress felt slow. Ava noticed the difference, not because Ethan announced growth, because he embodied it. The children noticed too. They trusted his presence because it did not fluctuate. He did not perform attention. He offered it freely and predictably. Ethan's grounding did not erase the past. It gave it context. He understood that repair happens forward. That responsibility is lived daily. That humility builds trust faster than apology ever could. Groundedness became his practice. It guided how he showed up as a parent. It shaped how he related to Ava. It informed how he led at work. Ethan learned that power without presence fractures connection. That leadership without accountability isolates. By choosing to remain present and grounded, he rebuilt himself into someone capable of sustaining what mattered most. Nothing in this story required explanation at the end. The outcome spoke clearly. Ava stood whole because she chose dignity over endurance. She did not wait for permission to protect herself. She did not trade safety for hope. She learned that love grows only where respect is enforced early. The children thrived because boundaries stayed firm. They lived in a world where voices were heard and limits were honored. They learned trust through repetition, not promises. They learned confidence through structure, not pressure. Ethan changed because accountability became practice, not performance. He accepted limits without negotiation. He showed up without entitlement. He learned that repair demands patience and humility, not urgency. Evelyn's role clarified something essential. Power used without care creates distance. Authority applied without respect leads to isolation. Influence does not grant access when trust has been broken. Every outcome reflected a choice. Silence once protected comfort. Boundaries later protected futures. The story did not reward endurance without dignity. It did not celebrate apology without change. It did not restore closeness without safety. These were the morals lived, not spoken. Love is not proven by how much one tolerates. It is proven by how well one protects. Respect does not arrive through time alone. It is established through action in critical moments. Healing does not begin when others change. It begins when one chooses self-respect. The lesson remained steady. If a relationship asks you to disappear, it is not love. If peace requires silence, it is not peace. And if boundaries cost you someone, that cost reveals what was never safe to keep. This story ended without spectacle because growth does not need it. It ended with clarity because clarity lasts longer than drama ever could. Time did not dilute the lesson. It embedded it. Ava noticed how the truth of her choices showed up in ordinary moments. In how she said no without explanation. In how she listened to her body before agreeing to anything. In how she trusted discomfort as guidance, not something to push through. These habits shaped her days. She chose relationships that felt calm from the start. She stepped away early when respect wavered. She corrected gently but firmly when lines were crossed. Nothing escalated because nothing was ignored. The children absorbed this without instruction. They watched how decisions were made, how space was protected, how calm responses replaced tension. They learned what healthy connection looked like by living inside it. Ethan carried the lesson into his own life as well. He stopped delaying difficult conversations. He addressed issues when they were small. He learned that protection must be active, not assumed. This changed how he led. He listened before deciding. He valued clarity over appearance. He understood that authority works best when paired with care. The family did not speak often about the past. They did not need to. The present reflected the outcome clearly. There was laughter without caution, quiet without fear, disagreement without collapse, repair without guilt. The lesson settled because it was practiced daily. Boundaries were not rigid. They were reliable. Love was not dramatic. It was steady. Peace was not fragile. It was maintained. Ava understood now what she wished she had known earlier. You do not owe access to anyone who harms you. You do not owe silence to protect someone else's comfort. You do not owe patience when dignity is at risk. These truths did not harden her. They freed her. And freedom, once lived, becomes the standard by which everything else is measured. This story stays with you because it feels familiar, not the events, the choices. Many people learn early to stay quiet, to smooth moments, to absorb discomfort to keep peace. It feels responsible. It feels mature. It feels loving, until it costs too much. Ava's journey shows a different truth. Peace that depends on silence is fragile. Love that survives on endurance is incomplete. The turning point in this story was not the public moment. It was the private decision that followed. The choice to leave without chaos, to rebuild without bitterness, to love again without surrendering safety. That choice changed everything. Ava did not become whole because others changed first. She became whole because she stopped negotiating her worth, because she treated boundaries as non-negotiable, not suggestions. Ethan did not become present through regret alone. He became present through discipline, through repetition, through accepting that accountability has no shortcuts. The children thrived because adults protected stability over comfort, because no one rushed healing for the sake of appearance, because love was practiced, not promised. This is the lesson that lasts. Boundaries do not destroy love. They reveal whether love is real. Silence does not save relationships. Clarity does. And choosing yourself does not make you selfish. It makes you safe. If this story made you pause, ask yourself one question. What boundary changed your life? Not the one you talked about, the one you enforced. Share your thoughts in the comments. Your experience might help someone else choose clarity sooner. If you value stories about dignity, accountability, and love built on respect, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to Love Tales with Mr. Easton. These stories exist to remind you of something simple and powerful. You are allowed to protect your peace. You are allowed to expect respect. And you are allowed to walk away quietly when dignity demands it.